The void had never felt so suffocating. Commander Elena Vasquez stood motionless in the observation chamber of Orbital Station Prometheus, her reflection ghosting across the viewport as she stared at the world below. Azure Prime, a jewel hanging in the cosmic darkness. Turquoise seas dominated its surface, interrupted by foresprawling landmasses that glowed amber and emerald beneath swirling cloud formations. Along the coastlines, lights flickered like scattered diamonds. 5.7 million souls lived down there. They had fled the chaos of Earth's overpopulation, seeking sanctuary in the silent embrace of the stars. They had found it here. Elena checked the time display. Her son Daniel would be heading to the academy soon. 13 years old, brilliant, obsessed with xenobiology. Last month, he'd sent her footage of a peculiar insect he'd discovered near their habitat. Translucent wings that refracted light into rainbows. His laughter in that message had been the only thing keeping her sane through the endless monotony of station duty. Then the alarm shattered everything. Crimson illumination flooded the chamber. Sirens wailed through every corridor like the screams of dying stars. Elena's boots pounded against metal grating as she sprinted toward the control nexus, her pulse hammering in her ears. Officers rushed past her, their faces painted with the same expression. Confusion bleeding into terror. Status. Elena's voice cracked through the command center as she burst through the doors. Lieutenant Kowalski looked up from her console, her dark skin ashen. "Commander, we've got multiple signatures. They just materialized at the system's outer perimeter. They appeared from nowhere, dropped straight out of hyperspace." "How many?" Elena demanded. 41 vessels, ma'am. Every single one is massive, dwarfs anything in our registry." Ice crystallized in Elena's veins. Azure Prime had no military infrastructure. They were colonists, farmers, engineers, teachers, families. The Terran Defense Coalition maintained a handful of patrol craft in neighboring systems, but nothing capable of confronting 41 warships of unknown origin. "Establish contact," Elena ordered, forcing her voice steady. "Standard first contact protocols. Broadcast on all frequencies." Kowalski's fingers danced across holographic interfaces, transmitting humanity's carefully crafted greeting. Mathematical sequences, cultural references, peaceful intentions encoded in every known format. They waited. Seconds stretched into agonizing minutes. The unknown armada continued its advance, a tide of metal and malice flowing toward Azure Prime in absolute silence. "Commander, they're accelerating," another officer reported, voice trembling. "Trajectory confirmed. Direct intercept with the planet." Elena gripped the edge of her console. "Time to intercept?" 7 hours at current velocity. 7 hours. Elena's mind immediately conjured Daniel's face. She needed to warn the surface. Needed to start evacuation procedures. Needed to do something. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, opening emergency channels to the planetary administration. Governor Castellanos materialized on display, his weathered face creased with concern. "Commander Vasquez, we're detecting massive anomalies." "What's happening?" "Governor, we have 41 unidentified warships approaching Azure Prime. They're not responding to communication attempts. I'm recommending immediate planetary evacuation protocols." Castellanos' expression crumbled. "Evacuate? Commander, we have nearly 6 million people. Our entire transport fleet combined couldn't move even 5% of that population in 7 hours." Elena knew he was right. Azure Prime had freight haulers, passenger transports, private vessels. Nothing designed for a rapid mass exodus. Even working at maximum capacity, they'd save thousands at best while millions perished. "Do what you can, Governor. I'm transmitting a priority distress beacon to Earth immediately. Perhaps reinforcements can arrive." It was a desperate fiction, and both of them understood it. Earth sat 22 days away at maximum hyperspace velocity. Whatever horror was about to unfold would be ancient history before help could arrive. The following hours crawled past like centuries. Planetary authorities scrambled to organize evacuations. Ships launched from spaceports, carrying whoever could reach them in time. Families torn apart by lottery systems. Children separated from parents, chaos masquerading as order. The station continued broadcasting to the approaching fleet, pleading, reasoning, begging for any response. Nothing worked. The alien armada advanced with mechanical inevitability, weapon systems charging, closing distance with terrifying precision. Elena recorded a message to Daniel. She told him she loved him. She told him to be courageous. She told him everything would be fine, even though she knew it was a lie that would haunt whatever remained of her life. For hours before orbital intercept, the silence finally broke. The transmission erupted across every frequency simultaneously. A face materialized on every screen throughout the system. Reptilian features dominated the image. Crimson scales, vertical pupils that gleamed like molten gold, teeth like daggers revealed when it spoke. The computer's translation rendered its words into cold, precise English. I am War Master Krethix of the Zalkarian Dominion, honored extension of the Coalition of Ascended Civilizations. This star system has been designated for a coalition territorial expansion. Your presence constitutes unauthorized occupation. Your species received explicit warnings against expansion beyond designated boundaries. This sector was reserved for species deemed worthy of such privileges. Rage ignited in Elena's chest. We received no such warnings. This system showed no evidence of prior claims or habitation when we arrived. Our surveys were comprehensive. The Zalkarian's expression suggested amusement. Your ignorance of coalition statutes provides no exemption from their enforcement. The penalty for unauthorized colonization is immediate sterilization. You have 60 minutes to evacuate military personnel from orbital installations. Civilian populations will be sanitized. The screen went dark. Sanitized. The word hung in the air like radiation. Commander, what are our orders? Kowalski asked quietly. Elena looked around the control center at faces too young, too dedicated, too full of futures that might end today. Through the viewport, Azure Prime continued its peaceful rotation, oblivious to approaching annihilation. We can't stop them, Elena said finally, but we can bear witness. Record everything. Every word, every action, every atrocity they commit. Humanity needs to know what happened here. We ensure their names, every single victim, is never forgotten. The crew returned to their stations. They would fulfill their duty until the final moment. The Zalkarian fleet achieved orbital position precisely on schedule, moving with the confidence of predators that had never encountered meaningful resistance. Their ships were Leviathans, dwarfing even Earth's largest military vessels. Weapon ports irised open along their hulls, revealing technology humanity had never imagined. Elena made one final attempt to negotiate, to plead, to bargain for the lives below. The Zalkarians didn't acknowledge her transmission. They had said everything they intended to say. The bombardment began at sunrise. Energy weapons lanced down from orbit. Incandescent beams that transformed cities into funeral pyres and heartbeats. The planet's primitive defensive grid attempted resistance, but their projectiles splashed uselessly against alien shielding. More ships joined the devastation, spreading systematic destruction across continents. Forests ignited. Oceans began to boil. The atmosphere itself started glowing from concentrated thermal energy. Elena watched everything. Tears carved tracks down her face as 5.7 million lives ended in fire. She thought of Daniel, prayed that his end had been instantaneous, hoped he hadn't been afraid. Communication channels from the surface fell silent within 12 minutes. Now there was only the terrible light show below, the methodical annihilation of everything humanity had built here. When the bombardment concluded, the Zalkarian fleet departed as silently as it had arrived, leaving behind a planet that radiated heat like a dying ember. Its surface had been scoured clean of all biological matter. The orbital station remained untouched. The Zalkarians wanted witnesses. Elena compiled every recording, every sensor log, every piece of evidence into a comprehensive data package. She transmitted it toward Earth through every available channel, tight beam transmissions, quantum entangled relays, even ancient radio broadcasts on the chance that something would reach home. Then she sat in her command chair and stared at the burning world below, trying to comprehend how this had happened, trying to understand the casual cruelty of species that could exterminate millions without hesitation or remorse. The transmission reached Earth 22 days later. The response was immediate and seismic. Every news network broadcast the footage simultaneously. People gathered in city squares, watching in horror as Azure Prime died. Governments convened emergency sessions. Protests erupted across every continent, demanding action, demanding justice, demanding something. Admiral Marcus Chun, commander of Earth's Terran Defense Coalition, watched the footage in his office at Fleet Command. He had witnessed combat before, had fought in the brutal wars that finally unified Earth's fractured nations, but he had never seen destruction on this magnitude. His hands trembled as he replayed the final moments of Azure Prime, watching cities vanish in flashes of light. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he said, voice steady despite the emotions churning inside. General Ramirez entered, followed by the Secretary General of the United Earth Government. Their expressions were grim. Ramirez spoke first. "The Coalition has transmitted a formal communication. They acknowledge the destruction of Azure Prime. They claim it was a lawful action under their legal framework. They're demanding that humanity immediately withdraw all colonial outposts and return to Earth and our immediate solar system. And if we refuse?" Admiral Chen asked, though he already knew the answer. The Secretary General activated a holographic display. "They've made their position unambiguous. We have 100 days to comply. After that, they've stated they'll enforce compliance themselves. They specifically mentioned that our entire fleet would be insufficient to prevent them." He paused. Their exact words were, "One fleet cannot stop us." Admiral Chen stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the orbital shipyards where humanity's warships were constructed. 53 vessels comprised the entire Terran Defense Coalition battle fleet. 53 ships to defend all of humanity's colonies, all of its outposts, all of its dreams among the stars. The Coalition had thousands. "What are our options?" he asked. "Political leadership is divided," the Secretary General admitted. "Some factions want to comply, preserve what we can. Others want to fight regardless of the cost. The final decision will be made at tomorrow's emergency session. But realistically, Admiral, what chance will we have?" Admiral Chen turned to face them. "In conventional engagement? None. Their technology is more advanced, their numbers overwhelming, and they have centuries of military experience. If we meet them fleet to fleet, they'll obliterate us in hours. Then we should withdraw," Ramirez said quietly. "Preserve what we can. Survive to fight another day." Admiral Chen shook his head slowly. "General, if we withdraw now, we're accepting that we exist at the Coalition's sufferance. We're agreeing that our lives, our expansion, our entire future depends on their permission. 5.7 million people died on Azure Prime because the Coalition decided they were unworthy of existence. If we submit now, how many more will die the next time the Coalition decides we violated their arbitrary rules?" "So, what do you propose?" the Secretary General asked. Admiral Chen pulled up tactical displays showing human force distribution across known space. "We don't fight their fight. We don't engage them fleet to fleet in honorable combat, according to their rules. We do what humanity has always done when facing a stronger enemy. We adapt. We improvise. We fight dirty if necessary. And we make them pay for every meter they take from us." He zoomed in on the Sol system, showing Earth's extensive network of orbital platforms, asteroid mining operations, and defensive installations. They said one fleet can't stop them. Let's show them what one fleet can do when it's defending its home. Let's teach the Coalition something they've forgotten after millennia of easy victories. Let's teach them what it means to fight humans who have nothing left to lose. The Secretary General studied Chen's face carefully. "You understand that even if we bloody their nose, even if we make them hurt, they'll likely win eventually." "Yes, sir. I understand that perfectly. But there are victories beyond survival. If we fight, if we demonstrate that humanity doesn't kneel, doesn't surrender, doesn't fade quietly into extinction, then maybe others will fight too. The Coalition rules because everyone believes they're invincible. Let's show the galaxy they're not." The following day, the United Earth Government made its decision. Humanity would not withdraw. Humanity would not submit. And if the Coalition wanted Earth, they would have to come and take it. The message was transmitted across all frequencies, broadcast to every corner of known space. It was simple and direct. We will not comply. Earth stands. Come and take it. In the Coalition's capital world, the message was received with contempt and amusement. The ruling council laughed at human defiance. They had crushed 1,000 rebellions, conquered hundreds of worlds, subjugated species far older and more advanced than humanity. These upstart humans would be taught their place, and the lesson would be written in blood and fire. War Master Krethix was given command of the enforcement fleet, 350 vessels, enough to reduce Earth to rubble and ensure no human would ever again challenge Coalition authority. He accepted the commission with pride, already composing a report he would file after Earth's destruction. On Earth, Admiral Chen began preparing his fleet for the coming storm. He had 100 days to transform 53 ships into a force that could face 350. He had 100 days to develop tactics the Coalition had never encountered. He had 100 days to prepare for a battle that would determine whether humanity lived free or died trying. The countdown had begun. The galaxy watched and waited, and in the darkness between the stars, both sides prepared for war. The war room at Fleet Command never closed anymore. Admiral Marcus Chin stood before the massive holographic tactical display, studying simulations, analyzing projected battle scenarios. Around him, dozens of officers, scientists, and strategists worked continuously, searching for any advantage humanity could exploit against the approaching Coalition fleet. Every simulation ended the same way. Humanity lost. Run again, Chin ordered, watching the tactical display reset. This time, disperse our forces more. Hit-and-run attacks on their flanks. The simulation played out in accelerated time. The Coalition fleet entered the Sol system in perfect formation. Human ships darted in, fired their weapons, and retreated. The enemy's shields absorbed the damage effortlessly. Coalition warships peeled off in pursuit, destroying human vessels one by one. The rest of the fleet continued toward Earth unopposed. Simulation time until Earth's destruction. 4 hours, 17 minutes. Chin rubbed his exhausted eyes. He'd been awake for 40 hours straight. Coffee had stopped helping hours ago. Again, this time concentrate all fire on a single target. Overwhelm their shields through focused damage. The simulation ran. Humanity's entire fleet concentrated firepower on one Coalition warship. The shields flickered and died. The ship exploded. Then the Coalition fleet turned as one and obliterated the clustered human forces in minutes. Simulation time until Earth's destruction, 3 hours, 48 minutes. We're thinking about this wrong, came a voice from the back of the room. Chin turned to see Commander Sarah Park, his chief tactical officer. She was young for her rank, barely 34, but possessed a brilliant mind for unconventional warfare. We keep trying to fight them like they're just another human navy, but they're not. They think differently. They fight differently. Explain, Chin said, grateful for any new perspective. Park approached the display and pulled up files from the Azure Prime incident. Look at how they approached the colony. Perfect formation, precise timing, methodical destruction. There's no chaos here, no improvisation. Everything follows a pattern. She pulled up more files showing historical data humanity had gathered about Coalition military actions. I've been analyzing every battle we have records of. The Coalition always fights the same way. They announce their intentions. They give enemies time to surrender. Then they attack with overwhelming force using standard tactical formations. It's almost ritualistic. Because they always win, Chin said slowly, beginning to understand. Exactly, Park said, excitement growing in her voice. They're fighting wars the same way they did thousands of years ago, because it always works. They never faced an enemy desperate enough or crazy enough to break all the rules. Chun felt something stirring in his chest. Not hope exactly, but possibility. So we don't play by their rules. We don't fight the way they expect. We can't beat them in a fair fight, Park said, so we make it as unfair as possible. Over the next 72 hours, the strategy began crystallizing. Chun assembled his best minds from every branch of military service, from civilian industry, from academic institutions. He brought in experts on guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, piracy, and every form of combat that civilization generally frowned upon. He needed people who thought outside constraints, because humanity's survival depended on breaking every rule of warfare the Coalition had ever written. Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the Lunar Weapons Research Facility presented the first breakthrough. She was a diminutive woman with silver-streaked hair and intense eyes, looking exhausted as she addressed the war room. "We can't match Coalition energy weapons," she began. "Their plasma cannons and particle beams are centuries ahead of our technology. But we don't need to match them. We need something they're not prepared for." She pulled up specifications for humanity's hyperspace drive systems. Every spacecraft uses gravitational manipulation to achieve faster-than-light travel. It's the only method that works. But the process requires enormous energy. When a ship drops out of hyperspace, there's a brief moment where that energy dissipates into local space. "We know this," one officer said. "It's why ships can't drop out of hyperspace too close to planets or other vessels. The energy discharge could cause catastrophic damage." "Right," Tanaka said. "But what if we weaponized it? What if we mounted hyperspace drives on missiles, small, fast projectiles that jump to FTL for just a fraction of a second, then drop out right next to an enemy ship? The energy discharge would be devastating." Chen leaned forward. "Would it work?" "In theory, yes. The Coalition uses similar FTL technology. Their ship system should be equally vulnerable to the energy discharge. And because it's not a traditional weapon, their shields might not be configured to block it." "How long to build working prototypes?" 3 weeks if we strip drives from civilian vessels and repurpose them. They'll only work once, and guidance systems will be crude, but we can make it happen." Chen nodded. "Do it. What else?" Commander Lisa Rodriguez from the asteroid mining colonies presented next. She was a weathered woman who had spent 25 years managing mining operations in the belt, with no patience for formalities. "Admiral, you asked us to think about how to make the enemy's numerical advantage work against them. I think I have something." She displayed a map of the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. "The Coalition fights in tight formations because it looks impressive and concentrates firepower. But it also makes them vulnerable. We have thousands of mining charges scattered throughout the belt, each one designed to fracture asteroids for processing. They're basically nuclear-powered demolition tools. If we place them strategically and detonate when the Coalition fleet passes through, we can turn the entire asteroid belt into a debris field. Their tight formations mean they won't be able to maneuver effectively. We can funnel them into kill zones." "Won't they detect the charges?" someone asked. Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Not if we hide them inside asteroids. We drill into the rocks, place the charges deep inside, then seal them up. From the outside, they look like any other space rock. By the time the Coalition realizes what they are, it'll be too late." More ideas flooded in. The head of Earth's orbital defense network suggested linking all defense platforms into a single AI control system that could react faster than any human crew. A civilian engineer proposed converting cargo haulers into missile platforms, sacrificing cargo capacity to mount massive weapons batteries. A former pirate, granted amnesty in exchange for expertise, suggested using debris clouds and chaff to blind enemy sensors. Chen listened to each proposal, approved most, and kept pushing for more. They needed every advantage, no matter how small, no matter how unconventional. Then Dr. James Mitchell, a specialist in artificial intelligence, presented the most controversial idea. His proposal made several officers visibly uncomfortable. "The Coalition bans military AI," he said. "Their laws forbid any artificial intelligence from controlling weapon systems or making combat decisions. Apparently, they learned the hard way after some AI rebellion centuries ago. It's one of their absolute rules. And you're suggesting we break it," Chen said. "I'm suggesting we use every advantage we have. Human reaction time is limited. We think in linear terms. We get tired. We make mistakes. We panic under pressure. An AI doesn't have those limitations. If we give our ships AI-assisted targeting and tactical systems, we can react faster and more efficiently than any Coalition crew. It's a war crime by their laws," another admiral objected. Chen's voice was cold. They destroyed 5.7 million civilians without warning. They're coming to destroy Earth next. I don't care about their laws. If AI gives us an advantage, we use it. Proceed with development. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what had just happened. Admiral Chen had made the decision to fight without honor, without following the Coalition's rules of warfare. It was a point of no return. As days passed, the transformation of humanity's defenses accelerated. Every shipyard in the Sol system worked at maximum capacity. Cargo vessels were converted into warships. Civilian stations were armed with weapons platforms. The asteroid belt was transformed into a minefield of unprecedented scale. Admiral Chen personally oversaw the most ambitious project, relativistic kill vehicles. The concept was simple but devastating. Take a dense metal projectile, accelerate it to 90% of light speed using Earth's massive particle accelerators, and aim it at the enemy. At that velocity, the projectile carried enough kinetic energy to destroy anything it hit. Shields designed to stop energy weapons would be useless against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The problem was guidance. At 90% of light speed, projectiles crossed vast distances in seconds. There was no time for course corrections. They had to be aimed perfectly from launch, and targeting calculations had to account for where the enemy would be several seconds in the future, not where they were now. That's where the AI came in. Only artificial intelligence could process sensor data fast enough, predict enemy movements with sufficient accuracy, and calculate firing solutions in real time. It was dangerous technology, banned by the Coalition for good reasons. But humanity was past the point of playing it safe. Chen also made another decision, one he kept quiet from most of his staff. He ordered construction of 200 sleeper ships, each capable of carrying 50,000 humans in cryogenic suspension. They would be hidden in deep space outside the Sol system, with orders to scatter in different directions if Earth fell. Each ship carried genetic samples, cultural databases, and everything needed to rebuild human civilization somewhere far from Coalition space. It was humanity's insurance policy. Even if Earth died, the species would survive. With 45 days remaining, Chen received a surprise visitor. Commander Elena Vasquez, the officer who had witnessed Azure Prime's destruction, had requested a meeting. He granted it immediately. She deserved that much after what she'd seen. Vasquez looked older than her file photos, her face lined with grief that hadn't faded in the months since Azure Prime. She saluted crisply as she entered his office. "Commander Vasquez," Chen said, "I'm glad you made it back to Earth safely. I've read your reports. They were invaluable. Thank you, Admiral. I came to volunteer for combat duty. I want to be there when we face the Coalition fleet." Chen studied her carefully. "Commander, you've experienced trauma that would break most people. No one would blame you if you sat this fight out." Vasquez's eyes were hard. "My son died on Azure Prime, Admiral. Daniel was 13 years old. He loved xenobiology and wanted to explore the galaxy. The Zalcarians didn't give him a chance to surrender. They didn't give any of us a chance. I need to be there when we make them pay for that." Chen nodded slowly. "I understand. I'm assigning you to command of the destroyer Retribution. She's not the biggest ship in the fleet, but she's fast and well-armed. We'll need good commanders who know what they're fighting for." "Thank you, Admiral." As Vasquez turned to leave, Chen called out to her, "Commander, when this is over, if by some miracle we actually survive this, I want you to promise me something. Help build a memorial on Azure Prime. 5.7 million names need to be remembered. Someone who loved them should be there to make sure they're honored properly." Vasquez's voice was thick with emotion. "And if we lose, then we'll all be with them soon enough. But at least we'll die knowing we fought back." With 25 days remaining, the Coalition sent another message. It was brief and contemptuous. "Your time grows short. Surrender now, and some of you may live as subjects of the Coalition. Refuse, and your world will burn like Azure Prime. You cannot stop us. One fleet means nothing against our might." Chen recorded humanity's response personally. He kept it simple. "Come and try." The final preparations continued. Every able-bodied person in the Sol system contributed something. Children in schools assembled supply kits for ships. Elderly citizens volunteered for civilian defense forces. Scientists worked around the clock perfecting weapon systems. Artists and musicians created works to preserve human culture in case the worst happened. On the final day before the Coalition fleet was due to arrive, Admiral Chin gathered his fleet commanders for one last briefing. 53 ships hung in space around Earth, each one a testament to human ingenuity and determination. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and outmatched in every conventional measure of military power. Chin looked at the faces of his commanders on the video conference, young and old, male and female, from every corner of Earth and every colony humanity had built. They all knew the odds. They all knew what they were facing. And they were all here anyway. Tomorrow the Coalition arrives, he said. They expect us to surrender or die quickly. They think one fleet can't stop them. They're probably right. But we're not trying to stop them permanently. We're trying to hurt them. We're trying to make them bleed. We're trying to show the galaxy that humanity doesn't go quietly into the dark. He paused, letting his words sink in. We fight using every weapon we have. We break every one of their rules. We show them no mercy because they showed none to Azure Prime. And when this is over, whether we win or lose, the Coalition will remember this day. They'll remember that humans fought back. They'll remember that we made them pay a price. One more thing, Chin continued. I won't lie to you. Most of us probably won't survive tomorrow, but our species will. I've made arrangements. Even if Earth falls, humanity continues. So fight knowing that whatever happens here, our people will endure. We're not fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for dignity. We're fighting to prove we deserve our place among the stars. The commander saluted, and the channel closed. Chin sat alone in his office, looking at tactical displays showing his fleet positions. 53 ships against 350. It should have been hopeless. It probably was hopeless. But humanity had faced impossible odds before and somehow survived. Maybe this time would be the same. Or maybe tomorrow would be the end of everything. Either way, the galaxy would learn something about humans that the Coalition had never bothered to discover. When pushed to the edge of extinction, when faced with overwhelming force, when given the choice between submission and death, humanity chose to fight. The countdown reached 0. Admiral Chin closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of all the people depending on him, all the lives that would end tomorrow, all the futures that would never exist if he failed. Then he opened his eyes, straightened his uniform, and prepared for war. The Coalition was coming, and humanity was ready to speak its answer in fire. The Coalition fleet arrived in the Sol system exactly on schedule. 350 warships dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, their appearance marked by brilliant flashes of light as drives discharged excess energy. The fleet moved in perfect formation, a wall of metal and weaponry stretching across the darkness of space. On the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, War Master Krethix watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. His scales gleamed under the bridge lights as he studied the approaching Sol system. This would be a simple operation. Humanity's defenses were primitive compared to Coalition technology. The battle would be over quickly, and another lesson would be taught to the younger species of the galaxy. All ships report ready. War Master, his tactical officer announced. Weapon systems are charging. Shields at full power. We detect 53 human vessels in defensive positions around the third planet. Krethix's mouth opened in what his species considered a smile. 53 ships against 350. The humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both. Open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered. Let's give them one final chance to surrender. The communication system connected, and Krethix's face appeared on every screen in the human fleet. He spoke slowly, clearly, wanting there to be no misunderstanding. Humans of Earth, I am War Master Krethix of the Zalcarian Dominion. You have refused the Coalition's lawful order to withdraw from unauthorized territories. You have been given ample time to comply. Now you face the consequences of your defiance. Your fleet is pathetically outnumbered. Your technology is inferior. Your resistance is meaningless. I offer you this final opportunity. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and your world will burn slowly as Azure Prime burned. One fleet cannot stop us. You know this to be true. Choose wisely. Krethix waited for the response, expecting either immediate surrender or desperate pleas for mercy. What he got instead was silence. Then every sensor on the Coalition flagship screamed warning simultaneously. The first relativistic kill vehicle hit the Coalition's vanguard before anyone could react. It had been accelerated to 90% of light speed hours ago, long before the Coalition fleet even arrived. The projectile was just a cylinder of dense tungsten, no larger than a cargo container. But at that velocity, it carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. The impact was catastrophic. The targeted Coalition cruiser's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, offered no resistance to solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The projectile punched through the ship like a bullet through paper, and the kinetic energy transfer tore the vessel apart from the inside. It exploded in a brilliant fireball, debris spreading in all directions. Before the flash of the first impact faded, 8 more kill vehicles struck home. 9 Coalition ships died in the opening seconds of the battle, and the fleet hadn't even seen what killed them. Evasive maneuvers. Krethix shouted, his composure cracking for the first time. All ships scatter formation. Find those weapons and destroy them. But the kill vehicles were unstoppable once launched. They moved too fast for point defense systems. By the time sensors detected their approach, impact was already inevitable. 6 more Coalition ships exploded as the barrage continued. The Coalition fleet broke formation, ships peeling away in different directions to avoid the invisible death raining down on them. It was chaos, exactly what the humans had planned. Now, Admiral Chin commanded from the bridge of his flagship, Earth's Defiance. All ships execute Alpha Strike. The human fleet had been waiting, hidden among orbital platforms and satellites surrounding Earth. Now they moved, accelerating hard toward the scattered Coalition forces. They didn't try to match the enemy's formation or engage in traditional fleet combat. Instead, they targeted individual ships that had separated from the main group. Commander Vasquez drove the destroyer Retribution straight toward a Coalition frigate that had broken away from its escorts. Her weapons officer had already locked onto the target. Fire everything, Vasquez ordered coldly. Don't give them time to recover. Missiles streaked across the gap between ships. Conventional weapons wouldn't penetrate Coalition shields, but humanity had learned from studying the Azure Prime footage. Enemy shields were powerful but had a recharge rate. If you hit them hard enough, fast enough, you could overwhelm their capacity to absorb damage. The first wave of missiles detonated against the frigate's shields, brilliant flowers of fire blossoming in space. The shields held. The second wave hit before the shields could fully recharge, causing them to flicker. The third wave broke through. Nuclear warheads detonated directly against the frigate's hull. Armor plating melted and vaporized. Internal systems exploded as the ship's power grid overloaded. The frigate tried to turn, tried to bring its own weapons to bear, but retribution was already past, racing toward its next target. All across the battlefield, similar encounters played out. Human ships struck fast and hard, then retreated before the Coalition could coordinate a response. It wasn't honorable combat by Coalition standards. It was hit-and-run warfare, ambush tactics, guerrilla fighting translated into space combat. Krethix watched his tactical display in growing fury as red icons marking destroyed ships multiplied. 23 ships gone already, and the battle had barely started. This was impossible. Humans were supposed to be inferior, weak, easily defeated. They weren't supposed to fight like this. All ships, reform ranks, he commanded. Activate full defensive protocols. Lock down all systems. No more individual pursuit. We advance as one unit toward the planet. The Coalition fleet began to coalesce again, damaged ships falling back, while others moved forward to screen them. The formation was looser now, having learned the danger of clustering too tightly, but it was still an overwhelming force. 327 ships remained operational against 53 human vessels. The outcome was still certain, but the humans had more surprises waiting. As the Coalition fleet advanced past Mars's orbit, the asteroid belt seemed to come alive. Thousands of mining charges detonated simultaneously, shattering asteroids into millions of fragments. The debris clouds expanded rapidly, creating a maze of deadly obstacles directly in the fleet's path. "Shields will stop the debris," Krethix said, though uncertainty crept into his voice. "Maintain course." At first, he seemed correct. Smaller fragments bounced harmlessly off the Coalition shields. But there were so many of them, a constant barrage of rocks ranging from pebble-sized to building-sized. The shields had to maintain constant power to deflect the endless stream of impacts. Energy reserves began to drain. Then the human fleet attacked again, emerging from the debris clouds like sharks from murky water. They had been hiding among the asteroids, waiting for this moment. Their own ships took damage from the debris, but they had planned for it, reinforcing their hulls and accepting the risk. The Coalition ships, their shields weakened from deflecting asteroid fragments, suddenly found themselves vulnerable. Human weapons that had been ineffective before now penetrated defenses. More Coalition vessels exploded or went dark, their power systems overwhelmed. "This is not warfare." Krethix screamed at his tactical officer. "This is barbarism. These humans have no honor, no respect for conventions of battle." His tactical officer looked at him with wide eyes. "War Master, we've lost 51 ships. Our casualties are approaching 18%. Should we withdraw and reassess?" "Withdraw." Krethix's rage was magnificent. "We are the Coalition. We do not withdraw from primitive species. All ships, maximum burn toward Earth. We will crush their planet and teach them the price of defiance." The Coalition fleet accelerated, pushing through the asteroid field. Despite the losses, they were still the superior force. They still had overwhelming numbers. Once they reached Earth orbit, they could rain destruction on the planet, just as they had on Azure Prime. But Admiral Chun had prepared one more trap. As the Coalition fleet crossed into the space between Mars and Earth, hundreds of automated defense platforms activated. They had been drifting in space, powered down, indistinguishable from debris until the moment they came online. Each platform was equipped with the FTL drive missiles that Dr. Tanaka had developed. The missiles didn't look like much, crude and ungainly compared to standard weapons. But when they activated their drives and jumped to FTL for just a fraction of a second before dropping out right next to Coalition ships, the energy discharge was devastating. Shields designed to protect against conventional weapons couldn't stop the gravitational chaos of an FTL transition occurring just meters away. Systems overloaded across the Coalition fleet. Ships lost power, shields collapsed, and in some cases, the FTL interference caused cascade failures in their own drive systems. 34 more ships died in the span of minutes. "Sir, we need to pull back," the tactical officer pleaded with Krethix. "We're sustaining too much damage. The humans have weapons we didn't know existed. We need to regroup and plan a new approach." Krethix looked at his displays, seeing red icons marking destroyed ships spreading across the tactical map like a disease. Over 100 ships lost, nearly a third of his fleet, against humans, against a species that shouldn't have been able to offer any real resistance. "No," he said firmly. "We continue. We have enough ships to complete the mission. Earth will burn." The remaining Coalition vessels pushed forward, their commanders now understanding that they were in a real fight. They abandoned their traditional formations entirely, spreading out to minimize the effectiveness of human ambush tactics. They activated every defensive system they had. They scanned constantly for hidden threats. The human fleet met them head-on for the first time, choosing to make a stand in Earth's orbit rather than continue hit-and-run attacks. Admiral Chin knew this was the moment that would decide everything. If the Coalition reached firing range of Earth, the battle was lost, no matter how many enemy ships they had destroyed. All ships full offensive. Chun commanded, "Everything we have, make them pay for every meter." The space around Earth turned into hell. Energy weapons crisscrossed the darkness. Missiles streaked between ships. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. The Coalition ships focused their fire with deadly precision, and human vessels began to die. The destroyer Retribution took a direct hit from a Coalition plasma cannon. The shot penetrated the shields and carved through the hull, vending atmosphere and killing half the crew in an instant. Commander Vasquez felt the ship shudder around her as systems failed and alarms screamed. "Damage report," she shouted over chaos. "Engines at 35%. Weapons systems critical. We've lost decks 4 through 8. Her engineering officer responded. "Captain, we can't take another hit like that. We need to fall back." Vasquez looked at her tactical display. The Coalition fleet was pressing forward, grinding down the human defenders through sheer firepower. More human ships were going dark every minute. They couldn't win this way. They needed something dramatic, something that would break the enemy's momentum. "How long until the main drive explodes if we overload it?" Vasquez asked quietly. Her engineering officer went pale. "Commander, if we overload the drive, it'll destroy the ship. There's no surviving that." "That's not what I asked. How long?" 5 minutes to full overload, then immediate detonation. "But, Commander, plot a ramming course of the Coalition flagship," Vasquez ordered, her voice calm, almost gentle. "Get the crew to the escape pods. You have 4 minutes." The bridge crew stared at her in shock. Then, slowly, they began following orders. They had all known this might come. They had all accepted that they might not survive this battle. Now the time had come to pay that price. "Commander, you should evacuate with us," her tactical officer said. Vasquez shook her head. "Someone needs to keep us on course. Someone needs to make sure we hit the target. That's my job." She thought of Daniel, her son who had died on Azure Prime, and felt at peace for the first time since his death. "Go. That's an order. Tell Admiral Chun I kept my promise. Tell her I fought back." The crew evacuated, and Vasquez sat alone on the bridge of her dying ship, guiding Retribution toward its final target. The Coalition flagship grew larger in her view screen, its massive bulk bristling with weapons. It was shooting at her, trying to destroy her ship before it could close the distance. Shots struck Retribution, tearing away armor and structure, but the destroyer kept coming. Vasquez activated the ship's communication system one last time. She broadcast on all frequencies, wanting everyone to hear. Her voice was clear and strong. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Earth Destroyer Retribution. My son Daniel died on Azure Prime. He was 13 years old. This is for him. This is for all of them. Humanity doesn't surrender. Humanity fights." Retribution struck the Eternal Dominion at full speed, its overloaded drive detonating on impact. The explosion was enormous, a miniature sun blooming in the darkness. The Coalition flagship, mighty and seemingly invincible, broke apart like a toy crushed by an angry child. War Master Krethix had just enough time to understand what was happening before the blast wave reached his bridge. His last thought was a simple one. One fleet stopped us. The destruction of the flagship threw the Coalition forces into confusion. The chain of command fractured as subordinate commanders tried to determine who was now in charge. The human fleet, sensing the moment of weakness, pressed their advantage with renewed fury. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display, seeing the tide of battle shift. The Coalition fleet was pulling back, withdrawing to regroup. They weren't retreating, not yet, but they were no longer pushing forward with unstoppable confidence. "All ships, maintain pressure," he commanded. "Don't let them recover. Keep hitting them." The battle raged on, but something had changed. The Coalition forces, for the first time in this engagement, were fighting defensively. The humans, bloodied and reduced to fewer than 22 operational ships, drove forward with the fury of a species that had nothing left to lose. Eventually, as the count of destroyed Coalition ships passed 160, someone in the enemy fleet made the decision to retreat. The remaining vessels broke off engagement and fled toward the edge of the system, jumping to hyperspace as soon as they reached safe distance. The Battle of Terra was over. The Coalition had been driven off. Earth had survived. Admiral Chin sat in his command chair, looking at the tactical display showing the scattered debris of destroyed ships, both human and alien. The victory had cost them dearly. Only 13 human ships remained functional. Thousands of crew members had died. The orbital defenses were in ruins. But Earth still stood. The planet below continued its peaceful rotation, unaware of how close it had come to sharing Azure Prime's fate. 5.7 million people had been avenged, and the galaxy had just learned that humanity could not be easily destroyed. Chen opened a channel to all surviving ships. Well done, all of you. You've saved our world and proved that humans will not go quietly into the darkness. Commander Vasquez's sacrifice will be remembered. All our fallen will be honored. But for now, begin rescue operations and damage control. The battle is won, but the war isn't over. He was right. The coalition had fled, but they would return eventually. They had to. Their entire authority rested on the belief that they were invincible. Humanity had just shattered that belief, and the consequences would ripple across the galaxy. The question now was, what would happen next? Would the coalition accept this defeat and negotiate? Or would they return with an even larger force, determined to erase humanity from existence, no matter the cost? Chun didn't know the answer, but he did know one thing with certainty. Whatever came next, humanity would face it the same way they had faced this battle, with courage, ingenuity, and an absolute refusal to surrender. The galaxy was watching now, and humanity had just given them something to think about. The emergency session of the Coalition High Council convened in chaos. Representatives from 35 member species filled the grand chamber. Their voices raised an argument that echoed off the crystalline walls. For the first time in centuries, the council faced something they had never expected. Military defeat at the hands of a species they considered primitive. High Chancellor Vexter, a being whose species had helped found the Coalition 5,000 years ago, called for order. His voice, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, cut through the noise like a blade. Silence! We will have order in this council. The chamber quieted, though tension remained thick in the air. Vexter's multiple eyes scanned the assembled representatives, seeing fear and anger in equal measure. We have all seen the reports from the Sol system, he began. War Master Krethix's fleet engaged human defensive forces 4 days ago. The fleet has withdrawn. Of the 350 ships we sent, only 183 returned. The flagship was destroyed. Krethix is dead, and Earth stands untouched. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some species representatives seemed shocked, though they had already heard the news. Others appeared thoughtful. A few looked angry. This is unacceptable, shouted Representative Drax of the Zalkarian Dominion, slamming a clawed hand against his podium. The humans used forbidden weapons. They deployed artificial intelligence in combat. They violated every convention of civilized warfare. We demand immediate action. The humans violated conventions because they were fighting for survival. Came a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. All eyes turned to Representative Lyra of the Silvari species. The Silvari were a small, peaceful race that had been conquered by the Coalition 4 centuries ago and served primarily as administrators and mediators. They rarely spoke at council sessions. Lyra continued, her voice steady despite the attention now focused on her. The humans were not signatories to our conventions. They owe us no adherence to our laws. We destroyed their colony without warning, without mercy, and then demanded their surrender. When they refused, we sent a fleet to destroy their homeworld. They responded the only way they could, using every resource at their disposal. Should we be surprised by this? They killed over 160 coalition ships. Drax roared. They humiliated our forces. This cannot stand. Then perhaps we should not have attacked them, Lyra replied calmly. High Chancellor, may I speak plainly? Vexter studied the Silvari representative for a long moment. Proceed. The Coalition has ruled through strength for thousands of years. We have conquered dozens of species, brought them under our authority, and enforced our will through superior technology and overwhelming force. This has worked because everyone believed we were invincible. Now, a species that has been in space for barely 3 centuries has driven off our fleet. What message does this send to galaxy? The chamber fell silent. Every representative understood what Lyra was saying, even if they didn't want to admit it. The Coalition's power rested not just on their military might, but on the perception that resistance was futile. That perception had just been shattered. What are you suggesting? Vexter asked. I am suggesting that we have 2 choices. High Chancellor, We can escalate, send an even larger force to destroy Earth, proving that we can crush any resistance with enough effort. Or we can negotiate, recognizing that the humans have earned the right to exist on their own terms. Negotiate with primitives? Drax snarled. Never. We should reduce their planet to glass and be done with it. Other voices joined in, some supporting escalation, others calling for caution. The debate raged for hours, with no consensus emerging. Finally, Vexter called for a vote. The decision was made by a narrow margin. The coalition would mobilize a larger fleet, 3,000 ships this time, and eliminate the human threat permanently. But the vote revealed something significant. Nearly 42% of the council had voted against escalation. The coalition was no longer united in purpose. The decision to send a larger fleet would take time to implement, gathering 3,000 warships from across coalition space, coordinating the logistics, organizing the command structure. All of this would require at least 7 months. The coalition moved slowly, their bureaucracy grown bloated over millennia of unchallenged power. During those 7 months, everything changed. The footage from the Battle of Terra spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The coalition tried to suppress it, of course, but information wanted to be free. Traders carried copies of the battle recordings to remote systems. Hackers broke into coalition networks and redistributed the data. Within weeks, every species in known space had seen what happened when humanity fought back. The reactions varied. Some species viewed the humans as dangerous rebels who needed to be destroyed. Others saw them as inspiration. But everyone was talking about it. The coalition's aura of invincibility had been permanently damaged. On Earth, Admiral Chin used the time to prepare for the next battle. He knew it was coming. The coalition couldn't afford to let humanity's victory stand. They would return with overwhelming force, and this time they wouldn't underestimate their opponents. But Chin also knew that humanity couldn't win a second time through the same tactics. The coalition would be prepared for a human unconventional warfare now. They would have developed countermeasures, adapted their strategies, learned from their mistakes. Humanity needed something new, something the enemy couldn't anticipate. The answer came from an unexpected source. 7 weeks after the Battle of Terra, Earth received an encrypted transmission from deep space. The source was unknown, but the encryption was sophisticated, more advanced than anything humanity currently used. It took military cryptographers 4 days to crack the code. Inside was a message from Representative Lyra of the Silvari species, along with detailed technical data about coalition military systems, fleet deployments, and strategic planning. The message was simple. Not all of us support what the coalition has become. Some of us remember what it was like to be conquered. We will help you in secret, for we cannot help openly. Use this information wisely. Chun stared at the data package in amazement. It contained vulnerabilities in coalition shield technology, weaknesses in their communication networks, details about their supply chains and logistics. It was intelligence beyond price, and it suggested something even more important. Humanity had allies within the coalition itself. More messages arrived over the following weeks, each from different sources, each offering support in various forms. A merchant captain from the KRYLL species provided information about coalition patrol routes. A scientist from the Meridian colonies sent designs for improved human weapon systems. A military officer from a conquered world shared tactical assessments of coalition forces. A pattern was emerging. The coalition had ruled for so long that they had stopped worrying about whether their subjects were truly loyal. They had assumed that centuries of conquest had broken the spirits of the species they dominated. But humanity's victory had reminded those species that resistance was possible. Hope, long dormant, was beginning to stir. Chen met with the United Earth government leadership to discuss these developments. President Nakamura, Secretary General Williams, and the heads of various military branches gathered in the secure conference room deep beneath Fleet Command. The question before us, Chen said, is what we do next. The coalition is preparing another assault on Earth. We have 7 months, maybe a little more, before they arrive with a force that will dwarf what we faced before. We can't beat 3,000 ships, not even with the intelligence we're receiving. Can we evacuate? Secretary General Williams asked. The sleeper ships you prepared could carry millions of people. We could scatter humanity across the galaxy, make ourselves too dispersed to be easily destroyed. We could, Chen agreed, but that's survival, not victory. And it means abandoning everyone who can't fit on those ships. Plus, if we run now, we're teaching the galaxy that humanity can be driven from our home. Every species watching us will learn that lesson. President Nakamura leaned forward. What's the alternative? We can't win a straight fight. We prove we can bloody their nose, but they'll adapt. They'll be ready for our tricks next time. So we don't fight a straight fight, Chen said, and we don't fight alone. He pulled up a star map showing coalition space. The messages we're receiving suggest that we're not the only ones unhappy with coalition rule. What if, instead of just defending Earth, we went on the offensive? What if we took the fight to them? The room fell silent. The idea was audacious, almost insane. Earth had barely survived one battle. Now Chen was suggesting they attack the coalition directly. Explain, Nakamura said carefully. Chen highlighted several systems on the map. According to the intelligence we've received, the coalition is mobilizing forces from across their territory to create this 3,000-ship fleet. That means they're pulling ships away from garrison duties, from patrol routes, from occupation forces. They're leaving themselves vulnerable in dozens of systems because they're so focused on destroying us. He zoomed in on specific locations. The KRYLL have been enslaved for 900 years. The Silvari have served the coalition for 4 centuries. The Meridian colonies have been strip mined for resources for decades. These species hate their coalition masters, but they've never had hope that rebellion could succeed. Until now. Until they saw Earth fight back and win. You want to start a galactic rebellion? William said slowly. I want to give the galaxy a choice, Chen replied. The coalition rules through fear and superior force. We've proven that they can be hurt. If we help other species fight back, if we show them how to resist, we can turn this into something bigger than just Earth versus the coalition. We can make this about freedom versus tyranny. But we barely have any ships left, one of the military commanders objected. How can we help others rebel when we can't even defend ourselves? We don't need to fight their battles for them, Chen said. We need to teach them to fight their own battles. We share our tactics, our unconventional strategies, our willingness to break the rules. We become the spark that lights fires across the galaxy. And while the coalition is dealing with rebellions on 40 different worlds, they won't be able to focus all their forces on destroying Earth. The debate continued for hours, but eventually a decision was made. Humanity would not simply wait for the next coalition attack. They would take the fight to the enemy, not with ships and weapons, but with ideas and inspiration. Admiral Chen sent messages to each of the sources who had contacted Earth. He offered technical assistance, tactical advice, and coordination for anyone willing to resist coalition rule. He didn't ask them to pledge loyalty to humanity or promise any long-term alliance. He simply offered them the tools and knowledge to fight for their own freedom. The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, unrest began spreading across coalition space. It started small. Work stoppages at mining facilities, sabotage of military supply depots, protests in occupied territories. The coalition security forces cracked down hard, but that only fueled more resentment. Then the first major uprising occurred. The KRYLL, whose homeworld had been conquered 9 centuries ago, rose in coordinated rebellion across their entire system. They used tactics learned from humanity's Battle of Terra, hit-and-run attacks, unconventional weapons, absolute refusal to surrender. The coalition garrison responded with brutal force, but the KRYLL kept fighting. Other species watched and learned. If the KRYLL could fight back, maybe they could too. Rebellion spread like wildfire across coalition space. The Silvari smuggled weapons to resistance movements. The Meridian colonists seized control of their orbital facilities and declared independence. A dozen smaller species launched guerrilla campaigns against coalition authority. The Coalition High Council watched in horror as their carefully maintained order collapsed. They had ships, they had weapons, they had technology, but they didn't have enough forces to suppress rebellions on 40 worlds simultaneously, while also maintaining their planned assault on Earth. High Chancellor Vexter called another emergency session. This time the mood was different. Fear had replaced arrogance. The humans have weaponized hope itself, Representative Lyra observed quietly. They have shown the galaxy that resistance is possible. And now everyone who has lived under our rule is rising up. We created this situation ourselves when we destroyed Azure Prime without mercy, and then failed to destroy Earth. We taught the galaxy to hate us, and then showed them we could be beaten. What do you suggest? Vexter asked tiredly. The Chancellor looked older than he had months ago, burdened by the weight of an empire crumbling around him. Make peace with the humans, Lyra said. Negotiate a settlement. Give them what they want, which is simply the right to exist without interference. Show the galaxy that the coalition can be reasonable, that rebellion isn't necessary, because we will listen to legitimate grievances. It's our only chance to stop this from spreading further. You would have us surrender primitives? Drax demanded, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. I would have us survive, Lyra replied. The alternative is watching our empire tear itself apart, while we waste resources trying to destroy one species that has already proven it won't be easily killed. We are facing a choice between pride and survival. I know which I prefer. The vote was closer this time, but it passed. The coalition would attempt to negotiate with humanity. When the message reached Earth offering to discuss terms of peace, Admiral Chin read it carefully before calling another meeting with Earth's leadership. They want to negotiate, he said. The question is whether we accept. Of course we accept, William said immediately. We've won. We've survived. We should take the peace while it's offered. Chin shook his head slowly. We haven't won yet. Yes, we drove off one fleet. Yes, we've inspired rebellions across their space. But the coalition is still vastly more powerful than we are. If we accept peace now on their terms, we're still accepting their authority over us. We're still agreeing that they get to decide which species are worthy and which aren't. What are you suggesting? Nakamura asked. I'm suggesting we don't just negotiate for Earth survival. We negotiate for a new galactic order. We demand that the coalition recognize the sovereignty of all species, not just us. We demand they grant independence to the species they've conquered. We use this moment, when they're weak and scattered, to fundamentally change how the galaxy works. They'll never agree to that, someone objected. They might, Chin said, because the alternative is watching their empire continue collapse. We have leverage right now. Let's use it. The negotiations would be complex and difficult, but for the first time since Azure Prime burned, humanity wasn't fighting for survival. They were fighting for something bigger. The right of every species to determine its own fate, free from the tyranny of ancient empires that have forgotten what it meant to earn their authority rather than simply taking it by force. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, the newcomers, the primitives, the species that wasn't supposed to matter, had become the catalyst for that change. They had spoken in fire, and the galaxy had finally learned to listen. For more such thrilling science fiction stories, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Starborn Tales.